she knows to ask me about my high-performing sport because she likes to show off that she's a high-performing sports person and I'm not. I have a black belt in Taekwondo, Kristen.
Welcome to PowrUp, a podcast full of insights for women that lead. Hosted by Nat and Kristen from Powrsuit, we're on a mission to amplify your impact as a leader. Join us each week and we'll share with you what's shaping our future from AI to Gen Z. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes.
Hello. Thank you so much for listening. We get so excited every week hearing new people who approach us to tell us they've picked up a little tip from the podcast and are actioning it and doing something different. And it brings us so much joy, right?
Yes.
Because at Powrsuit, we are committed to giving you the tools and confidence to build a career on your terms. And today's episode is no different.
Yes. Did you like my lot of yes?
Yes, I was like, this is such a classic. Kristen speaks Canadian apart from her yeases.
That's the first thing I adopted because I had imposter syndrome in New Zealand and I just was like, I'm going to adopt a few words. Anyway,
and now we say Melbourne. Melbourne, yes, Melbourne.
I know. My kids make fun of me for Melbourne. But alas, this is what happens when you have teens. I was really inspired to tackle this talk coming off the back of a launch of an agency. And they had Alan Bunting, who's this Black Ferns coach, which is the New Zealand women's rugby team. And they won the World Cup last year. And it was this incredible story of how he came in as a new coach and really transformed this team into a high care, high expectation environment. And I was like, we need to talk about that because that's something we try to do with all the businesses that we're in. Who doesn't want to be in a high performance environment? But we're going to chat about that today.
Absolutely.
And,
and getting that combo is the critical thing. We see some really good high care, some fairly good high expectations, but that combo of the two is the magic, and that's
magic.
Hard.
That's really hard. So we tackled empathy last week, which is part of the high care in the podcast. So have a listen to that episode. Today we're going to tackle high expectations. But before we get into it, Nat, I want you to share what's something that scared you last week and how did you work through it?
I think last week was quite a scary week.
Yeah.
We're at the stage in Powrsuit that I don't know how many months in now we are. I keep saying 3, but it might be 4 or 5 now. And we are at the point we're trying to figure out how to monetize what we're doing, how to create something that's valuable enough that hopefully organizations are willing to pay for it to help women equip themselves with the things that they need to succeed. Mm-hmm. And we don't know how we're going to do that yet. And we've deliberately not gone there to date. We have a very well-trodden path we walk down when we build businesses. But I have found last week was quite odd in that we're close enough to seeing the future, but not able to quite see it yet. And that's so frustrating and scary because we haven't asked anyone to pay and we haven't quite got it. Like we've got these sort of murky ideas of what something might shape up to be, but it's not there. And I think we've talked before about being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And this is one of those deeply uncomfortable times. And I just have to fall back on, I've been here before. I've been here so many times before. It feels weird and it's just one step in front of the other and trying to take a breath and actually making a point of patting ourselves on the back and not always looking one step forward, but sometimes taking the chance to
look how far we've come.
Yeah, see how far we've come, because these times, this is the grind. This is, I think, what people talk about with the grind. But what about you? Was it the same thing, or you find that?
There was a really specific instance. We have been accepted into this startup accelerator, which is pretty cool because we're surrounded by a bunch of other women founders doing really meaningful businesses, which I love. So we need support just like everyone listening. And even though we've done this kind of path before, this is a very new challenge for us. But we went to this 2-day launch of this accelerator, which was quite cool. And the one really scary moment for me was when we had that speaker that was chatting about storytelling and presenting. They gave a challenge of getting up and being over the top and almost infomercially with a pitch for your business. And that was a scary thing
with
for me.
30 seconds.
With 30 seconds, because I hate feeling silly in front of other people. So how I got through that, my palms started to sweat. I did not realize my heart rate,
you're so good at it.
My heart rate rose and I started to do the panic thing, which you do. And there was 2 things that I got through. One was I had to assess the situation and establish some facts. So the first was that it was a safe place. Everyone else was probably feeling the way I did. So I recognized that. The second was that there was nothing on the line. The downside was tiny. And I was like, there will be no loss of money or maybe a little bit of pride or like
Not
ego.
really, because everyone was in the same boat. I think I must have gone through that list in my head
That's
too.
right. Okay, so I've assessed that this is a safe place. There's very little downside risk. Then what I did to get me through the scared thing was I knew that I had to go right away. The more I thought about it, the more I'd psych myself out. So when she was like, who wants to go first? I was like, Kristen, I gotta go. I gotta get this over with. And that wasn't about me wanting to be up there. That was about I'm panicking. And if I think about this more, I'm not going to do it. So I got up there. I knew I had to connect with the audience to break down the barrier of speaker audience. I just have to do the thing where they're like, I've been there. So I asked everyone a question. You know, who here has experienced a crisis of confidence? And everyone put their hand up.
I love it because I think that's a great example of don't compare your inside to someone else's outsides.
Yeah.
Because to everyone else in the room, you looked so confident. You put your hand up first, you went out, you nailed it. And it's really interesting to,
really
I think, for all of us to recognize that what someone's presenting, most of us are trying to fake it till we make it, or put on a bold face and just try and do it. And I think you kind of get over yourself. So let's talk about what was exciting.
Well, I look back and we had to stand up and do a pitch. Ultimately, it ended on us doing a pitch to a room full of people, including potentially future investors or mentors. And that I thought we nailed it. So that was really exciting for Powrsuit, is we were able to get together and on a one page agree on the big, bold vision and what it might look like and how big this opportunity is and things that we really care about as they relate to women and their leadership pathways. And so I thought that was exciting about Powrsuit, is we were able to distill it on a page and present it, which I thought we did really well.
That was pretty epic, given the day before we didn't have anything.
I know.
And I think it was like on my scared thing, there was something really cool about having to define what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
I had a really interesting, and side note for anyone who's listening going, what are they on about this week? We're trying to change the format of the podcast a little bit just to adapt. We had some feedback last week. We asked a whole bunch of people for feedback, and we're just going to keep trying new things. So keep letting us know what you like and what you don't like. So for me, this was actually a huge mental barrier for me last week that I overcame. And that was during the same accelerator, we had to say a pepeha, which is a Māori introduction to who you are. It's a way traditionally Māori have introduced themselves, and I have never had one. And it's been quite a source of shame for me because I largely grew up in New Zealand. I've never learnt Māori, and it's one of our 3 official languages. And I kind of felt like I was the only person left in this country who hadn't taken that step. But because I grew up traveling around the place, I find it quite confronting as well. My pronunciation isn't great. I feel like I missed a lot of school years because I was overseas, where you'd learn the language, but also a lot of the traditional pepeha is about your place of origin, and I don't feel like I have one. So to be effectively forced as part of this to stand up and introduce yourself through a pepeha was so exciting to me because it finally made me do it.
Great.
And probably bombed out, but I am just so proud that now I have the starting point of one, and I am going to keep working on it and get to the point that I really comfortably can introduce who I am.
Yeah, I love it.
I really enjoyed that.
So that was interesting. That was the deadline. That is what is required for a high performing team. And again, we spoke about empathy last week, so that is required as part of this. But today I thought we would look at the high expectations and what he shared with this group of people. What makes up high expectations is, number one, the team came in and they knew what success looked like. They had a deep sense of purpose and commitment to the mission, and they had an ambitious performance goal. For success to them was to win gold. They were like, we're going to go to this World Cup and win gold. So that was the first thing. The second was they knew what was expected of them at every practice. So what's involved in this is there was accountability to each other and a clear understanding of their responsibilities and what they brought to the team and the obligations of being part of that national team, incredibly powerful national team. And the last thing was that the team has to have trust between one another and interdependence. So you get these diverse range of expertise that complements one another's abilities, and you have each other's backs. And so those 3 elements were what he spoke about as part of a high expectation environment. So what's been your experience with high expectations, either in work or sport, and high performing teams?
She knows to ask me about my high-performing sport because she likes to show off that she's a high-performing sports person and I'm not. I have a black belt in Taekwondo, Kristen.
Can I?
I'm a high-performing sports person.
That's bloody amazing. Anyway. Okay, then work.
I think high expectations, I feel like this side, the expectations comes relatively easy to me. These 3 steps or 3 parts of it, I've had to learn quite quickly through, is it trial by fire at various times.
As a leader, yes.
Yeah, as a leader.
Because you have to create that environment.
You do. Yeah. And I think that's what we sort of talked about right at the start is it is much easier to have a very high care organization or a very high expectation organization, but neither of those things alone leads to high performance. So finding that magic of, and I think it is worth, if you listen to this, going back and listening to the empathy side too, of how do you do these things with empathy and building, and I suppose that interdependence and trust element comes from that. What is my experience of knowing what success looks like? Well, I think the first tool that I have actually encouraged since leaving Hatch, which we put in place very, very early, and I talk to a lot of organizations about now, is defining what success looks like. Yeah. And a lot of organizations tend to have either, and I was actually having this conversation over the weekend, what is a KPI or what is a success measure for each department? I fundamentally disagree with that. I think you have, and I think that's to the point of the interdependent team, you have an organizational goal, and different teams contribute to that organizational goal. You don't need to have one for your team. You should be able to point to how your team contributes to that organizational goal. So if you're in charge of the company, set that up. If you're not, take what you have and really try and connect those dots to what success looks like. And I remember really early on at Hatch, I thought it came naturally to everyone to be able to connect those dots. And I remember someone in our operational team, so they were responsible for moving people's money from the bank account into the investment account to help them start investing. And I'd just given one of my lectures on what success looks like for the team and how we were measuring it. And someone very bravely put up their hand, although it probably wasn't brave because we'd created a safe environment for everyone to ask questions, and said, I just don't see how my day-to-day job contributes to this. And it was such a light bulb moment for me that we absolutely as leaders have to take the time to connect those dots and to say, well, the faster you move the money, the better the customer experience, the more they're going to tell their friends about it, and the more they're going to invest because they've built trust. It was growth, wasn't it? Really pointing to the little specific things everyone can do. And I notice it now, the number of organizations who have what success look like or their organizational goals somewhere in a drawer, or the leaders know it, and we just have to say them time and time again and connect those dots.
Yes, and I think storytelling was a really big part of our roles at that company. And I think take the opportunity as a leader to tell the story at every meeting. And so we opened it with why we're here, where are we shooting, and I know North Star is this overused term now. People hate it. Fine. But we did have a manifesto. It was the first thing we did, and our manifesto, while that sounds very communist, was actually a living document of why we exist and how we behave at work and what we value and what we care about and what success looks like. So we were able to document, again, our purpose and our values and how we work. And that was given to every single person we interviewed. And then we spent an hour with those people after they were hired to talk them through that document that summarizes up that cliched term of North Star. But then we told stories at every single meeting to remind people of where we're going and why this meeting and decisions we take today tie to that. And what the storytelling enables is that deep sense of purpose and commitment, that reminder of this is why we're doing this is why we get up. And it really inspires people. And I think we want to go to work in an inspiring environment and have meaning and self-identity with what we do and how we add value. And without that, it's meaningless.
And especially if you, as all of us do at some points, have to do boring work. But if you can connect the dots of that kind of manual labor or whatever it is that you have to do to something bigger, you can do that work with purpose. Yeah. The other tactic that I have on this now, because we tried so many things. We tried for a while starting every workshop with someone repeating our mission statement in a different way. Yeah. Because what we found very quickly is we were telling a lot of stories and people weren't necessarily taking that on as their...
Yeah, is it adopting it or something?
Adopting it as something that they could...
That's right.
And
Tell at a barbecue. We wanted them to talk about what they were doing at a barbecue.
How could you give the elevator pitch of what we're trying to deliver to the world?
In their words.
And it was amazing. The first time we had a session where we got everyone in and said, go around in a circle and just say what we're doing in your own words. And it was amazing to me how few people actually could do it. Part of it was being put on the spot, I suppose, but what that did is give everyone this really strong sense of responsibility. Again, safe space. It was fine if no one knew. Yeah. But people started actively thinking about it and going, why am I here? And I think in a lot of organizations, and this is the advice I give to emerging leaders now, is if you can't articulate in your own words the North Star or the vision for your company, the mission you're on right now, and the key measures of success, then you should go back to that document and find them, because that is your job, to proactively know that. You shouldn't be waiting for the CEO to keep telling you.
No.
That should be your thing you can take on yourself.
Absolutely. That's also the strategic thing, isn't it? Because you can end up doing work for work's sake and not moving the needle for an organization. And that is genuinely, if you understand where you're driving to and how you can contribute, then you spend your energy on strategic work, which is the work that moves the needle, which is the work that's visible, the work that gets recognized. Please shout to at the top of your lungs. It's amazing work and how you're contributing.
Well, and also I think we live in a world of mad prioritization, because there's always a million things to do. And when you know what success looks like for the organization or for your team or for yourself, you're going to pick the right work. If you don't know, you are going to end up running in any different direction and doing a whole bunch of stuff that isn't worthwhile. Yeah. So, and what we found at Hatch was when people really embodied what success looked like for the organization, they would be the first to push back and say, well, how does this help us, if they couldn't understand it?
Again, they adopt it and own it. And
There's
then
a
you
sense
end up
with
ownership.
People prioritizing on their own, or really questioning in the right way some of the strategic decisions we were making to make sure that we would make them clearer or that we would challenge them. And I think that, so to me, that's incredibly easy. Most organizations have this stuff.
Yeah,
I think
it is getting together with a leadership group. It's defining, again, what success looks like, how it's measured, and how are you going to storytell and get people to really have a deep sense of commitment to that purpose
and believing in it. Because I think where organizations often go wrong is they put it in a drawer and then they don't behave in any way like what they've got written there. So that's again a job as a leader, is to make sure that what success looks like is what your behavior looks like.
And one thing is to give people the freedom of an exit hatch or parachute ripcord, because you're not going to, every time you join a team or an organization, it might not be the perfect fit for you. And I think it's okay to say, I am not behind this mission. I don't have a deep connection. I recognize they have high expectations. I might not fit. And I think that's okay. And I think back to sporting time, I have to use a sporting analogy, is I was a synchronized...
She's a high performance sports person.
Well, I wasn't, because this is a story of a dropout. But I was a synchronized swimmer, because that's cool again in Canada. But I remember when I was 12 years old and I went to this camp and we had a bunch of goal setting, and I looked at the girl next to me and I was on the edge of making this A team, which was like the top team. And it was incredible team that was going places, high expectations, high performance team, and I was on the edge of making it. And I looked over at this girl who'd set a goal, and she said, 12 years old, I am going to go to the 2002 Sydney Olympics and win a medal. And
that's my goal for Kristen's daughter at the moment.
For diving, And I looked at that and I thought, there was this sense of clarity. First of all, I was shocked that someone could have such a big goal at 12, which was really eye-opening to me. How incredible. That was a great learning experience. But the second was that I didn't share that goal. And I thought, wow, so this A team has that goal. And they are going that direction, and You're don't fit.
I just want to wear glitter.
I knew, no. I actually knew I wasn't good enough. I knew I wasn't good enough to go to the Olympics. And so at 12, I quit that sport.
Kristen has a very strong theory that you know if you're going to the Olympics by the time you're 5.
But no, I had time to adopt another sport and get to a national level, which I did.
Very important. That was Kristen's goal.
Yeah, it was. Those were goals in my time of life. And I was like, well, I might as well give another one a crack. And I stepped off that high-performing train because I knew I wasn't good enough.
Your goal was not aligned.
Well, and I would have ruined I would have been the weak link. And guess what? Can I just share the closing of that story? Is that I went on to like very mediocreness and sporting, but they went on and they won a bronze medal at the 2002 Sydney Olympics. Love that. And I love that I wasn't a part of that, and I recognized that and did something about it.
I love that, because I think we sometimes stick to things way too long. And I think with that goal setting, it goes back to something we talked about a while ago and wrote about what if it all goes right.
Yes.
And I think I used to not really be a goal setter personally, but I've always had sort of vague goals. And I think that idea of what if it all goes right? What if I did get to the Olympics? Can I stick and imagine that? And that's probably the case, well, it is the case with work as well. What if at Hatch, it was what if we do change the wealth landscape of New Zealand? And we believed so strongly in it and made good progress on it.
And you talked a little bit about knowing how your work contributes to the bigger vision. So I think that fits into knowing
what's expected?
What's expected of you when you come in, and the work and the standards that's expected. We did a great newsletter article this week on that, so people should go to our website, have a read.
Because I think there's a couple of elements to that. There's the what's expected in terms of how it connects the dots. There's the what's expected in terms of quality and the standard.
Yes.
And then there's the what's expected in terms of behaviour. And I think that hiring for behaviour and attitude is far more important than hiring for technical skills, because a lot of those technical skills you can teach them relatively easy. But that's what's expected in terms of behaviour. And that sort of comes to that interdependence and trust. Is it's expected you will be trustworthy and trusting. It's expected you will collaborate. It's expected that you will leave as much of your ego at the door as you can and be really open to curious and open to feedback and see it as a gift. All these expectations that have to be extremely clear, because then again people know. I used to call it the red culture car, the culture car. This is the culture car. You're either in or you're out.
And we wanted a culture of exceptional. That was a word we used from the beginning of starting that business, and I expect it's what we'll do again at Powrsuit. And in that culture car that we're in, we want to be exceptional. We want to put exceptional things out and really change people's lives. And that means the quality of our work, what's out in the wild. It's not always going to be perfect, but we do think that quality is important, and
we think it's extremely important. And that word exceptional is a challenge to people, because you could do good work elsewhere and that will be fine. For us, exceptional is the only standard we will accept.
I do think a lot of companies now recognize exceptional work and are doing really interesting things. I mean, even at a bank, like, good grief, their campaigns are incredible.
They're doing
and their
amazing.
Ads are incredible. And so I think exception is a really fun and rewarding place to be if you can get in a workplace like that.
Absolutely, and that often means doing less better, and that means, I mean, absolutely have a read of this week's newsletter about how to stop doing everyone else's work, and a lot of this ties in with
that is that trust and delegation, and maybe we'll wrap up with that, is that sense of, as a leader, we have to trust our people that we've hired well, we've equipped them with the skills they need to do their jobs well, or support them, I should say, and we've been really clear on the expectation, the standard, whatever the project is or the outputs required for that time, and we trust them to, I suppose, deliver, and we have to delegate, like, not jump in.
I think trust has always been, it's not that I struggle with trust, but I see trust as a two-way street. And I think as a leader, especially if you're an empathetic leader, there is that element of you are also a human and you need to also build trust the other way. And I think that expectation is something that I like to set very early of, we are in this together. We want to have a highly productive working environment. So how do we build trust in each other? How do I build trust with my team that they know that when I give them feedback, it's meant with the right intention and it's meant to make their work exceptional? And how do they build trust with me that when they're going away, they're doing that work to that level and they're not sort of cutting corners? Or not that anyone's ever done that, but you have to build that trust through back and forth and through setting each other up for success, and recognize, I think a lot of people sort of come at trust as you just give it by default. I don't believe in that. I believe trust is built slowly, and it probably mimics the path of onboarding people, that you start out a lot more working together because you're trying to get on the same page about what the success looks like and what expectations there are, and you have to be a lot more hands-on. But as you build that trust, you start to ping back and forth a lot easier and know what to expect and what you can push and how to get the right stuff out of each other. And I think my expectation with new working relationships is that's going to take time, and I'm comfortable with that. Whereas I know other people are sort of trust on day one, and that can work out really well too. It's not been my approach. I don't know. What's yours?
Yeah, I've definitely been more hands-off, I think, as a leader, and probably hired for whatever be the right skills. And my assumption is that everyone knows what is required of them. And I possibly in the past haven't given timely enough feedback, because, you're often run off your feet. And so that's something that could certainly be improved. But I love the idea of completely empowering other people, but just probably more check-ins required to making sure people are on the right
stuff.
Yeah, the guardrail stuff. I think
both come more towards the middle.
Guardrails. Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I think that's really important. But I am a fan of delegation, because I don't
want to work 24/7.
Yeah, I don't want to work 24/7.
Well, and you value the things that you can add.
Yeah, and it is really hard not to step in and do the work. And anyone who has kids who has watched them struggle with tying their shoelaces or doing up a zipper on their coat, you just want to step in there and be like, we've got to go, we're in a rush. And it's similar to work. It's like, if I just do this thing quickly, it's going to be done right and it's going to be done well. But you just have to avoid at all costs, or they're never going to get where you can get to.
Yeah, there's two things there, and the first one is that I've been talking to a lot of people about this recently as well, is if it takes you half the time to do it as it takes someone else, let them take twice as long.
Yeah.
You're still saving that time, and that's really important.
Yes.
And then the second thing on that is a friend of mine told me with tying your shoelaces, which she said is a great analogy for work.
Yeah.
You start by tying the shoelaces for someone, then you end up doing it with them, then you watch them do it and critique them, and then they're off doing it themselves. And she was like, if you actually follow that path with a lot of onboarding teammates and people at work, that is a path to learning. And you just need to know when you back off from the doing.
Yes.
And when you're hiring talented people, you probably can skip the step of doing it for them.
Yeah, great. Well, we touched on a few things: storytelling, expectation setting, buying into the vision, delegation, trust. So I hope everyone got a little bit out of that. And please do let us know.
So do I.
Yes. Let us know if you like the new format, a little bit shorter. And I thought we would just end on, Nat, how are you tracking towards your goal, whatever that might be? Share what it is and how it's going.
For someone who doesn't have a lot of goals, I have a lot of goals. One of the things, my family decided, maybe about a year ago, to buy a plot of land together and build a yurt and rent out this yurt as a luxury stay. And so my goal at the moment is to get this yurt built. That's a start. I've never built a yurt before. Council consent, all that sort of stuff. Ticked that one off. So the next goal is to set up Airbnb and rent a batch and all of these tools, and learn how to market and rent out a batch.
Amazing.
Well, a yurt.
Great. So well, I look forward to updates.
Yeah, I kind of just do it in my spare time, but it's actually taking up a lot of brain space. So I need to start making little steps on that.
Getting on
What about you? What's the goal you're working towards?
Well, do you remember how New Year's resolutions are a waste of time? And we did a bit of research. I think it's 21 days.
Yeah,
that they last.
Mine didn't last even that long. Yeah, I think it is 21
days and they're gone.
Or maybe 18.
Okay, so my New Year's resolution, if you recall, is a 6-pack.
I think
my stomach,
downgraded,
not beer.
Has it been downgraded?
Hang on. So first of all, it's unrealistic, because even when I trained 24 hours a week, I never, ever had a 6-pack.
Athlete.
Whatever, amongst other sports, and never had a 6-pack. So I know that's not a thing, but it's symbolic. It means that I feel healthy, because the last 4 years have been really intense and I didn't prioritize my
I agree.
fitness.
I agree with that.
That is a resolution, and instead of starting it in January and failing it on Jan 21, I started it on April. I started it in April, 3rd. So I was
found a loophole.
I found the loophole in the New Year's resolutions, and I started it in April. Great. And I still have time to my 6-pack, so it's going well. I have, cut down on bad food and booze, and we
can't afford it anyway because of inflation.
It's so true.
Did you know potatoes have increased in price by 150%?
And we just got an air fryer, so I mean we are potatoing it up at the moment.
Oh well, they're
fries
$4 a kilo now.
Well, anyway, so I've been enjoying, I'll let you know how I'm tracking towards my maybe 6-pack, but it's been going well.
I think that's a good one. Yeah. I think my version of that is just putting time in my calendar to do exercise, because I don't, because I'm a workaholic, and that's terrible. Do as we say, not as we do. No, we're learning. We're improving ourselves.
Yeah, we're best version of ourselves. So thank you so much for listening. Please visit PowrSuit.com. If you liked this episode, give us 5 stars, because then other people get to hear us.
Even if you didn't, give us 5 stars. We're brand new. We'll learn and iterate.
Be generous. And check us out. Check all of our free articles out at PowrSuit.com. You can find us on Insta and LinkedIn. And we will catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.